All right, so maybe you're listening because you want to learn English, maybe brush up on it, or just see what all the fuss is about.
Well, you've come to the right place.
Today we are going to
Learn.
be taking a deep dive into this podcast episode called The Best Way to Start Learning English
Oh, yes.
from a series called English Dose.
English dose.
And, it's kind of meta, right? Like analyzing a podcast about learning English while we're on a podcast.
Podcastception.
Right? Our expert guides in this little meta-learning adventure, I guess you could call it, are Mark and Lisa,
Mark and Lisa.
the hosts of English Dose.
They're great.
They are great, and they've laid out, a pretty clear roadmap to fluency that
Yes.
we are going to break down for you.
Step by step.
So you can walk away with some solid steps that you can actually use.
That you can use today.
Today,
Yeah.
right. So what's the first thing they're emphasize?
Well, first they break the process down into 4 key areas: listening, speaking, reading and writing, and then finally, immersion. And they really hit home on how important listening is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they call it your superpower.
When it comes to language acquisition.
Exactly.
I can see how listening is important, but they use this analogy, listen like a baby. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, think about it.
Uh.
Before a baby can even, utter its first word,
Yeah.
they spend months just soaking up the sounds
Yeah.
and the rhythms of the language around them.
Right.
They aren't actively trying to understand grammar rules or vocabulary.
No.
They're just absorbing this, soundscape.
Yeah.
It's in this, immersive environment
Mm-hmm.
that the foundations for language are laid.
Right.
You know?
I do.
Yeah.
But how does that translate to someone trying to learn English as a, non-baby?
Well, it's all about creating that immersive experience
Okay.
for yourself.
Right.
Surrounding yourself with the language
Yeah.
as much as possible.
So podcasts, audiobooks,
Movies, even music.
yeah.
It all, contributes to that subconscious absorption.
Oh,
They don't need to understand everything
Right.
at first.
Right.
It's about getting comfortable with the sounds
Mm-hmm.
and the flow of the language.
So it's like building up that ear for the language first.
Exactly.
I get it. I remember when I was learning Spanish, I started listening to Spanish music way before I could understand what they were saying.
Oh, yeah.
It just kind of helped me get a feel for the sound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of getting a feel for things,
Oh.
Mark and Lisa are huge proponents of speaking
Right.
from day one.
Day one.
Yeah.
See, that's interesting because I always feel like I need to have a decent vocabulary.
Yeah.
Before I can even attempt to speak.
Sure.
It's definitely the part that intimidates me the most.
I think that's a common fear.
Yeah.
But they actually suggest doing something that sounds kind of silly
Uh-oh.
at first. But talking to yourself in English.
Talking to yourself what's funny is now that you mention it, I do remember kind of narrating my actions in Spanish.
Oh.
When I was first learning, I am making coffee.
Yeah.
I am putting sugar in the coffee.
Yeah.
Did that actually help?
It might sound strange, but it's actually a really effective way to practice thinking in the language.
Right.
And getting comfortable forming sentences,
Yeah.
without the pressure of being judged by anyone else.
Right.
So you're essentially creating a safe space for
Mhm.
yourself to experiment and make mistakes.
Okay. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So start with listening to get that ear for the language.
Yep.
And then don't be afraid to just start speaking, even if it's just to yourself at first.
At first.
And then once you feel a bit more confident, you can start looking for opportunities to practice with other people.
Exactly.
So finding a language partner, that can be a bit daunting though, right?
Yeah.
Where do you even start with that?
There's actually tons of online platforms
Oh, really?
and apps
Okay.
designed specifically for language exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find someone
Yeah.
who speaks English as their native language and wants to learn your native language.
Oh.
And you can help each other out.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's like a mutually beneficial language learning partnership.
Exactly. And they make a really good point about the importance of interactive practice.
Okay.
Like when you're talking to someone in real time,
Yeah.
you have to think on your feet,
Right.
respond to questions, and clarify your thoughts, all in English.
Yeah.
So it really pushes you to use the language
Mm-hmm.
in a more dynamic way.
I can see how that would accelerate the learning process.
Absolutely.
So we've covered listening and speaking.
Uh-huh.
What about reading and writing?
They're big advocates for both,
Okay.
but they stress the importance of starting small.
Okay.
So instead of tackling a huge novel,
Right.
they recommend starting with shorter,
Okay.
more manageable texts,
Oh, okay.
blog posts or news articles.
Okay, gotcha.
And the idea is to focus on grasping the main ideas rather than getting bogged down in every single word.
Right. Makes sense. And they also talk about the importance of writing down new words that you encounter.
Yes.
But isn't reading them enough? What's
Well,
the benefit of actually taking the time to write them down?
That's where we get into the science behind how our memory works.
Okay.
So when you encounter a new word, just reading it exposes you to it passively.
Right.
But when you take the time to write it down, and ideally use it in a sentence, you're engaging in what's called active recall.
Active recall, I've heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like pulling that information from your memory, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're forcing your brain to work a little harder to retrieve that information.
Mm-hmm.
And that process actually strengthens the neural pathways
Okay.
associated with that word, making it much more likely that you'll remember it in the future.
So it's like that extra effort of writing it down actually helps cement it in your memory.
Exactly.
Like, think of it like building a mental muscle.
Uh-huh.
The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. And they even suggest going a step further and trying to use those new words
Yeah.
in your own writing.
Oh, okay.
Even if it's just simple sentences at first.
So not just write down the definition, actually try to use it in a sentence?
That's exactly.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
It reminds me of how I used to keep a vocabulary notebook when I was learning Spanish.
Oh, nice.
I'd write down the word, the definition, and then try to come up with an example sentence using it.
That's awesome.
It's funny how those techniques stick with you even years later.
It's because they work.
I guess so.
And speaking of things that work,
Okay.
Mark and Lisa bring up another really important element of language learning, and that's immersion.
Immersion. We talked about that earlier.
Okay.
In the context of listening, right? Like
Well-
surrounding yourself with the language.
Right, but they take it a step further
Okay.
and talk about actively seeking out opportunities to use English in your daily life, even outside of like dedicated study time.
So like what are some examples they give?
Well, one suggestion that really stood out to me was cooking from an English recipe.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah,
I can just imagine the potential for like hilarious mishaps in the kitchen.
totally.
Like accidentally using salt instead of sugar
Oh, yeah,
because you misread the instructions.
exactly.
I love that they emphasize making learning enjoyable.
Yeah,
It shouldn't feel like a chore.
absolutely. And it's those little everyday interactions that really help the language sink in.
Right.
They even suggest something as simple as changing the language settings on your phone to English.
Oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
But it's so simple. You're
Yeah.
constantly interacting with your phone. So that's
Yeah.
a lot of exposure right there.
Right.
And it forces you to think in English, even for like mundane tasks like sending a text message
Mhm.
or checking the weather.
Totally.
So it's about finding those little ways to weave English into your daily life, even
Yeah.
when you're not actively studying.
Exactly. The more you can integrate it into your routine, the more natural it will become.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the importance of listening like a baby to build that ear for the language, the power of speaking from day one, even if it's just to yourself, and then the benefit of like active reading and writing.
Yes.
And finally, this whole idea of immersion, finding ways to use English in your everyday life.
Yeah.
It's really a holistic approach to language learning.
It is. And I think what makes their approach so effective is they really emphasize the importance of consistency
Okay.
and finding a routine that works for you.
So it's not about cramming in hours of study every day,
No.
but rather finding ways to incorporate these different elements into your life in a way that feels sustainable.
Exactly. It's about creating a lifestyle where English is a natural part of your day.
And don't forget to have fun along the way.
Of course.
We're all about making learning an enjoyable experience here at the Deep Dive.
Absolutely, because when you're enjoying the process, you're much more likely to stick with it and see results.
Okay, so we've unpacked Mark and Lisa's 4-step roadmap to English fluency.
Uh-huh.
And it's clear they've given us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But where do we go from here? How can our listeners actually put all of this into practice?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Ooh, a cliffhanger.
Tune in next time,
Stay tuned, folks.
and we'll find out.
We'll find out.
All right.
Can't wait.
Me neither.
It feels like we've been given this amazing toolkit,
Yeah.
but now the question is, what's the best way to use it?
That's where it gets really interesting. It's less about a one-size-fits-all approach and more about figuring out what works for you. The key takeaway is that these 4 steps, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and immersion, they work best when they're all in play, supporting each other.
So like a feedback loop.
Exactly.
So the more you listen, the easier it is to speak.
Uh-huh.
And the more you read, the better your writing becomes, and so on.
It's about creating a learning ecosystem for yourself where each skill reinforces the others.
Okay, that makes sense, but it can still feel a bit overwhelming.
I can see that.
Where would you recommend someone start if they want to put all of this into action?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is to start small and build momentum. Instead of trying to do everything at once, pick one thing from each of these 4 areas and make it a part of your daily routine.
For example, maybe commit to listening to an English podcast for 15 minutes every morning.
Exactly. Or maybe try reading one short news article in English before bed.
Okay.
And for speaking,
Yeah.
you could challenge yourself to have a 5-minute conversation with yourself in English every day.
Oh, right. Remember the self-talk technique.
Exactly.
No judgment.
Exactly. And for writing, maybe try keeping a simple journal in English.
Okay.
Just a few sentences about your day.
So it's about picking those small, manageable actions that you can realistically fit into your life, even if you only have a few minutes to spare.
Exactly. And what I think is so brilliant about Mark and Lisa's approach is they don't just give you these techniques. They also emphasize the mindset shift
Oh, okay.
that's needed to truly become fluent.
Mm-hmm.
It's about seeing English not as a subject to be studied,
Oh, interesting.
but as a tool to be used,
Okay.
a way to connect with the world around you.
That's such an important point. It's not just about like memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary lists.
Yeah,
It's about actually using the language to communicate, to experience, to learn.
right. And that's where the fun comes in.
Yes.
When you start to see English as a doorway to new experiences and connections, the learning process becomes so much more enjoyable and engaging.
So, to wrap things up, we've taken a deep dive into the world of English language learning,
Yes, we have.
exploring the 4 key areas that Mark and Lisa from English Dose lay out in their podcast episode. We've talked about the importance of listening like a baby, the power of speaking from day one, the benefits of active reading and writing, and the transformative power of immersion.
And we've explored how these 4 elements work together to create a powerful learning ecosystem.
But now the real work begins. It's up to you, our listener, to take these tools and start building your own path to fluency.
Remember, every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to your goal.
Love it.
Keep learning, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep exploring the incredible world of English.
So it feels like we've got all these pieces,
Yeah.
this toolkit,
Mm,
but how do we put it all together?
right. And that's kind of the beauty of it.
Hmm.
There's no one right way to do this.
Okay.
It's about finding what works for you.
So it's not like a recipe,
No, it's more like,
guidelines.
yeah, like a set of ingredients,
Okay.
and you can
Start
experiment,
that.
see what tastes good to you.
I like that, you
Yeah.
know? Find your own flavor.
Exactly.
So where would you suggest someone start?
Well, I always recommend starting small.
Okay.
Don't try to do everything at once.
Right.
Pick one thing
Okay.
from each of those 4 areas.
Listening, speaking.
Reading, writing, immersion.
Okay.
And just try to do it every day.
Like a little bite-sized chunk
Exactly.
for each one?
Yeah, so like maybe you listen to an English podcast for 15 minutes while you're making breakfast.
Okay, I can do that.
Or you read a short news article before you go to bed.
Okay, good idea.
And maybe you have that little conversation with yourself.
Talk in a mirror.
Yeah, exactly, just for 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get those words out.
Get comfortable.
Yeah.
And then, what was the last one? Writing?
Yeah, you can keep a journal.
Okay.
Just write down a few sentences about your day.
That's manageable.
Yeah. Totally.
So it's like those little things.
Little steps.
I love that.
Over time,
I love that.
consistency is key.
Right, because if you make it a habit, it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that Mark and Lisa really emphasize.
Yeah.
It's not just about, learning the language.
Right.
It's about changing your mindset.
So it's not just a skill.
No, it's a lifestyle.
Oh, I like that. English is a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's about integrating it into your life.
So it's not this separate thing. It's
Right.
just part of who you are.
Exactly. And when you start thinking about it that way,
Yeah.
it becomes less about studying
Right.
and more about
It's
experience.
about living.
Yeah, living in English.
I love it.
And that's when the real magic happens.
So we've come to the end of our depth dive
We have.
into the world of English language learning.
And I hope we've given you some inspiration
Yes.
and some practical
A
tips
toolkit.
to get started
Now it's your turn.
and start exploring.
Amazing world of English.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep having fun.
Abs-
Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you're listening, you probably want to sound more natural when you speak English, maybe understand native speakers a bit better.
That's usually the goal. Yeah.
Huh. Well, today we're diving into a technique that some call a shortcut for that. It's called shadowing.
Shadowing, right. It's pretty much what it sounds like. You're echoing someone
Echoing. So you just listen and repeat.
instantly. Yeah. You hear a native speaker and you try to say exactly what they said right away.
Okay, but it's more involved than just mimicking words, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. You're not just getting the words. You're aiming for the whole sound, the intonation.
Like the melody of the voice.
Precisely. The
Oh.
rise and fall. And the rhythm, how sentences flow, which words get stressed, even the speed.
So it's kind of like acting. Like you have to deliver the line exactly the same way.
That's a great way to put it. And, the interesting part is what it does to your brain. It helps you sort of internalize the patterns.
Ah, so you start thinking in English more rather than like translating first.
Exactly. It bypasses that translation step. And that's really why it's so effective for pronunciation.
Right, because you're absorbing those natural sounds without consciously studying rules.
You just start to sound more, well, natural, more like a native speaker because you're copying one directly.
Okay, that makes sense for speaking.
Yeah.
But what about listening? It seems like you'd have to listen really carefully to do this.
You absolutely do. It sharpens your ear incredibly. You start catching things you might normally miss.
Like how words get smushed together in fast speech.
Yeah, connected speech or reduced sounds, things that often make understanding fast talkers difficult.
And I guess if you understand better, you feel more confident speaking too.
Totally. Better listening leads to more confidence, and the act of repeating itself, it builds a kind of muscle memory.
Muscle memory for your mouth, basically.
For your mouth, your tongue, even your brain coordinating it all, speaking becomes less hesitant, more automatic, more fluent.
Okay, I'm sold. This sounds really powerful. So, how do people actually start? What's the process?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. Step 1, find a short audio clip,
How short?
maybe 30 seconds, a minute at most. Could be from a podcast, a YouTube clip, maybe a movie scene.
Something manageable.
Right. Then just listen to it once. Don't speak. Just get the gist, the meaning, the speaker's sound.
Okay, listen first. Then what?
Then you listen again, but this time you repeat immediately after the speaker, like their shadow.
Trying to match everything: speed, tone.
Speed, tone, the emotion, if you can catch it. Don't stress about perfection initially, just try to mimic.
And just keep doing that with the same clip.
Yep, repeat it multiple times. You'll probably find you get slightly better each time. It really reinforces the learning.
Any tips for beginners if it feels too hard at first?
Good point. Yeah, using subtitles or a transcript can help.
So read along while you listen and repeat.
Exactly, just to give you that extra support. But the goal is to eventually try it without the text once you feel a bit more comfortable.
Makes sense. What kind of stuff works best for finding clips?
Well, interviews are often good because the speech is usually quite natural, conversational.
Okay.
TED Talks are great too, especially since many have transcripts readily available.
Transcripts are handy.
Definitely. Audiobooks, if you can get the text alongside them. Even scenes from movies or TV shows you like.
Something engaging, probably.
Yeah, choose voices you actually enjoy listening to. You'll be hearing them quite a bit.
So, wrapping this up then, shadowing is like taking your English skills to the gym, working out those speaking muscles.
That's a perfect analogy. It might feel awkward at first, like any new exercise.
Sure.
But even just say 10 minutes a day consistently, it can make a really noticeable difference.
In both speaking and understanding.
Absolutely. The two really feed off each other with this method. Short bursts, big cumulative gains over time.
So for everyone listening, the message is pretty clear. Give it a shot. Find a short clip today, something you find interesting,
Hit play.
and just start echoing. It could genuinely be a super effective way to spend a few minutes on your English practice.
You know, this brings up an interesting question, actually. How does this kind of really active listening and repeating stack up against, say, more passive learning, like just listening to things?
In terms of long-term improvement.
Yeah. What really sticks? That might be something to explore in another deep dive. Welcome to the deep dive. So, you're looking to boost your English, and let's be honest, time is tight. We've got some great material you shared about using AI apps for language learning, and that's our focus today.
Yeah, and the core idea seems to be this promise of personalized practice, right? On demand.
Exactly. Fits into your life. Forget waiting for classes. The AI is ready when you are.
And looking at these resources, what's really striking is just how accessible it makes things.
Right.
No more waiting for a class slot or, finding a practice partner. It's immediate, tailored.
Pretty much right there in your pocket.
Right. So our mission here is to sort of break down the practical ways you can use these apps now for grammar, vocab, pronunciation, the whole package.
Okay, let's dive in then. First up, chatting with AI assistants, things like ChatGPT came up a lot.
Yep, familiar name.
Beyond just asking it random facts, how can listeners really use these for English specifically?
Well, based on what you sent over, a really good way is to just treat them like conversation partners. You can practice putting sentences together, ask, hey, does this sound right? Or get instant grammar help. It's a low pressure zone, really.
Yeah, I like that. Like you could prompt it, can you help me write a quick email? Or maybe, what's another way to say I'm busy? Something like that.
Exactly. And you get that feedback straight away. It's personalized.
And the big plus, highlighted in one of the sources, is that it's always available 204/7.
That's a huge advantage, like having a language tutor ready whenever you've got 5 minutes spare. That constant access really can speed things up.
Okay, makes sense. Now, what about actually speaking? Voice AI came up too, particularly for pronunciation. How does that work?
So these apps let you speak, actually say words or sentences, and then they give you feedback on how you sound,
Mm-hmm.
which is brilliant for building confidence,
Yeah.
especially if you feel a bit shy about speaking with native speakers at first.
Right, it helps you get comfortable with the sounds, the rhythm. One article you shared mentioned apps that even give visual feedback.
Yeah, that's a really neat feature. Seeing how your pronunciation might be off, not just hearing it, helps you understand better and, well, fix it more effectively.
So it builds fluency and kind of lowers that fear factor.
Definitely. Take some of the pressure off making mistakes in front of people.
Okay, so we've got conversation practice, speaking practice. What about writing? Several sources mentioned AI analyzing text.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. These tools can scan your writing, emails, essays, whatever, almost instantly.
And give feedback on.
Grammar, spelling, sure, but also suggesting, like, stronger word choices. One piece showed examples where the AI actually explained the error, so you learn why it was wrong.
Ah, okay. So it's like an editor and a mini grammar lesson rolled into one.
Pretty much. And that quick feedback loop, that's what helps you improve much faster than, say, waiting for a teacher to grade something.
Right. Spits things right up.
And beyond just errors, some can help with style and tone, too, making sure your writing fits the situation.
Good point. Okay, finally, this idea of building a habit. Daily AI prompts were mentioned in some of the resources.
Yeah, these little daily challenges. It might just be a simple question or a sentence to work with.
Like what?
Could be describe your favorite food
Mhm.
or talk about your weekend plans. Maybe even translate this phrase. Simple stuff.
And the idea is you respond, either speaking or writing.
Exactly. Reinforcing the skills we just talked about. And you get that immediate feedback again.
So it's a small, manageable way to make English practice part of your daily routine.
Yes, and that consistency, even if it's just, 5 or 10 minutes, that's what really makes the difference in language learning long term. Constant reinforcement.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive here, the main takeaway from these materials seems clear. AI makes English practice way more flexible and accessible than ever before.
Totally. These tools are right there, ready to use. And what's also compelling, looking at the trends, is how they're constantly getting smarter, more personalized.
So our suggestion to you, the listener, just try it. Seriously, download an app today, maybe one mentioned in the stuff you sent over, and just play around for 10 minutes.
See how it feels. Experience that instant feedback.
Get a feel for it yourself.
And just remember, it's a tool, right? A powerful one, but it works best, I think, when you use it alongside other ways you're learning. Integrate it.
Good point. It's
Yeah.
part of the mix. So here's a final thought to leave you with. Imagine what dedicating just a little bit of consistent AI practice each day could do for your English skills over time. How could that compound? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, let's jump straight into something really crucial for sounding clearer in English. Word stress.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can, pronounce all the sounds perfectly, but if the stress is in the wrong place.
It just sounds a bit off, right?
Yeah.
Maybe even hard to catch what someone's saying.
Exactly. So word stress is basically which bit, which syllable in a word gets the emphasis. You say it a little louder, maybe hold it a tiny bit longer.
Like think of table. We naturally say table,
First syllable.
but then a word like about is about.
Second syllable gets the push.
Get those mixed up, and it sounds, well, pretty strange to a native speaker. So, yeah, understanding this stuff is key. Let's maybe look at some basic patterns.
Definitely. Let's start with a really common one. For most nouns and adjectives with two syllables, the stress tends to hit that first syllable.
Okay, like,
Window or clever, happy, lots of those everyday words, they follow this.
gotcha. Simple enough, but then it flips for verbs, usually.
Often, yeah. For a lot of two-syllable verbs and prepositions too, the emphasis moves to the second syllable. Think relax or present when it's a verb.
Ah, okay. And prepositions like about, which we already said, or maybe across.
Right. And what's really interesting, sometimes the same word can be a noun or a verb, and the stress tells you which one it is.
Oh, yeah. Like record the noun versus record the verb.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
The stress pattern signals the meaning. It's subtle but powerful.
Okay, here's one I find really helpful. compound nouns, two words squished together.
Like postman.
Yeah, or blackboard. The stress almost always goes on the first word. Postman, blackboard.
That's a great rule of thumb, and kind of the opposite happens with like compound verbs or phrasal verbs.
How so?
Well, the main stress tends to fall in the second part, so think understand.
Right, or like get away. You stress the way part more.
Exactly. These patterns really give English its characteristic rhythm.
Now, I know there are more rules, like for words ending in "ike" or "etchimation."
Yeah, things like graphic or information, where the stress is often just before that ending.
Or those silly, sillify endings that push the stress back.
Like democracy or photography, stressing the third syllable from the end. Useful for academic words, maybe.
But maybe we don't need to get totally bogged down in all of those right now. Let's talk practical stuff. How can people actually, get better at hearing and using this?
Well, the absolute best way is just active listening. Really pay attention when you hear native speakers, podcasts, videos, whatever. Try to catch which syllable pops out.
Oh, definitely. And don't just listen. Try repeating. Mimic what you hear.
Mimicking is huge. And here's something physical you can try. As you say a word, maybe clap or tap your finger on the stressed syllable.
Like T-able tap or a bow tap.
Exactly. It helps connect the sound to a physical feeling, helps internalize that rhythm.
That's a cool idea. What else?
Don't forget dictionaries. Good ones, online or print, will show you the stress, usually with a little mark, like an apostrophe, before the stressed syllable. Ah, right. Like you might see egg tied up BL for table. That visual cue can be super helpful.
For sure, it takes the guesswork out.
So, okay, wrapping this idea up, why is this so important? It's not just about sound, like perfect, is it?
Not at all. It's fundamentally about clarity. Getting the stress right makes your English much easier for others to understand. It smooths out communication.
Yeah, it contributes to that natural flow, the sort of music of the language.
Absolutely. And that boosts your fluency, your confidence. It just makes speaking feel, well, better.
Okay, so here's a concrete thing for everyone listening. Try this. Pick, say, 5 new words you learned this week. Look them up. Find that stress mark. Then just practice saying them out loud, really focusing on hitting that stress syllable correctly.
That's a fantastic, manageable exercise. Doing that consistently makes a real difference.
Small steps, big impact on your pronunciation.
And maybe think about this going forward. Now that you're more aware of word stress, how might that change how you approach learning new vocabulary from now on? Will you listen for the stress right away? Ooh, good question to mull over. Something to think about. And on that note, that's our deep dive into word stress for today. Hope that was helpful.
Yeah, hope you found something useful there.
Join us next time for another exploration.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into time management.
Yeah, we're looking at the English Dose podcast, Mastering Time Management, for some solid tips.
Exactly. We want to pull out the really practical stuff, the things you can use like right away to feel a bit more on top of your day.
Because everyone feels it, don't they? That sense of never having quite enough time for, the important things.
Learning English, maybe exercise, or just, well, living life.
And time, unlike money, you just can't get more of it once it's gone. That's a key point you made.
So true. So our mission today, actionable strategies. Let's make time work for us, not against us.
Okay, let's jump in. Their first big idea was planning the day, but doing it the night before.
Yeah.
Why is that so effective?
What really stood out to me is how it just cuts down on that morning indecision.
Right, that what should I do now feeling.
Yeah. They suggest just writing down, say, 3 to 5 specific things. Could be simple, like practice English 15 months.
Or go for a quick walk.
Or read 1 chapter. It just sets a clear path for the day ahead.
And you wake up knowing what needs doing. It removes that mental barrier, that friction. You're not wasting energy deciding.
You just do. Plus, ticking those things off feels good, right? Gives you momentum.
Definitely. Okay. Moving on, they also talked quite a bit about the Pomodoro technique, the 25-minute focus rule.
Ah, yes, the timer method. Can you break that down a bit? How does it work?
Sure. It's beautifully simple, really. You work like super focused on one task for 25 minutes, no distractions.
Okay.
Then you take a short break, just 5 minutes, stretch, grab water, whatever.
And you repeat that cycle.
Exactly. You do about 4 of these Pomodoros, these 25-minute bursts, and then you earn a longer break, maybe 15, 20 minutes.
I can see how that would help with concentration. Knowing a break is always just around the corner.
Precisely. Stops things feeling overwhelming, especially big tasks. You could apply it to English study, one Pomodoro for speaking, one for writing.
That breaks it down nicely, makes it seem less daunting.
Yeah. Now, they also warned about common time traps, things that steal our focus.
Oh, we all know these, like scrolling endlessly on our phones.
That's a big one. Or falling down those video rabbit holes online.
Guilty. And saying yes to too many things, perhaps. Overcommitting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The podcast suggests asking yourself a really direct question when you're doing something. Is this actually helping me reach my goals?
Ooh, that's a tough filter. Puts things in perspective.
It forces you to be a bit ruthless, about protecting your time. Learning to say no sometimes.
Right. It's about being intentional, which leads nicely to their final point, the power of routine.
Yes. Consistency over intensity. That was a strong message.
So it's not necessarily about finding huge blocks of time.
Not at all. They emphasize that small, consistent efforts, even just 10 or 15 minutes every day, add up massively over time.
Way more effective than trying to cram in hours sporadically.
Much more. Think about practicing English for 15 minutes daily versus a 3-hour session once a month. Which one builds the skill better?
The daily habit, for sure. Builds momentum, makes it stick.
Exactly. So consistency is key for making real progress towards those goals.
Okay, so wrapping up, it seems the core message isn't about magically finding more hours in the day.
No, it's about being smarter, more deliberate with the time we do have.
So that involves a bit of planning, using focused work intervals like Pomodoro, consciously avoiding those time-wasting traps.
And building consistent routines. Showing up, even for a short time, regularly.
And crucially, being kind to yourself in the process. Progress, not perfection.
That's so important. Small steps forward compound. Don't beat yourself up if you miss a day. Just get back to it tomorrow.
A great reminder. So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is, what's one small change, just one thing from this discussion, you could try today?
Yeah, what's that first simple step to manage your time a little better and edge closer to what you want to achieve?
Something to think about. Thanks for exploring these time management ideas with me.
My pleasure. Good stuff to consider.
Until our next deep dive.
It's funny, isn't it? You can have, amazing vocabulary, perfect grammar in English. But if the pronunciation isn't quite there, it feels like something's missing, like you're not quite connecting.
Absolutely. Communication breakdown, even with the right words.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're really cutting to the chase. We looked at this transcript from the English Dose podcast.
Yep.
And the mission is, well, pretty simple. Pull out the best, most actionable tips for improving English pronunciation. Fast.
And importantly, the goal isn't some kind of perfect native accent, right?
No, not at all. It's about clear, confident communication. Getting your ideas across effectively.
Precisely. And that clarity, it actually does more than just help others understand you.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, it sharpens your own listening skills, especially in, faster conversations. And it definitely boosts your confidence when you speak.
Okay, I can see that. So let's dive into these tips. The first one they mention is listen and imitate, or shadowing.
Right, shadowing.
It sounds straightforward, maybe too simple, just copying native speakers.
Well, yes and no. The real power, I think, is in how it helps you absorb the rhythm and the melody of English, the intonation.
The musicality of it, things you don't get from a textbook.
Exactly. So you listen to short clips, podcasts are great, movies, YouTube, whatever works for you, and you repeat. You focus on the tone, the stress, the flow. It's really quite effective for sounding more natural, even if your grammar isn't, absolutely perfect yet.
Okay. Shadowing. Got it. Now the next one, I admit this makes me cringe a little. Record yourself. Yeah.
Nobody loves hearing their own voice, usually.
Right. So why put ourselves through it? What's the actual benefit here?
The key insight is bridging the gap between how we think we sound and how we actually sound. Recording gives you that objective feedback. You suddenly hear the sound you thought you nailed, or maybe your intonation goes up when it should go down.
Like holding up a mirror, basically.
Exactly. A mirror for your speech. It helps you spot those little persistent errors you might otherwise completely miss.
That actually makes a lot of sense, even if it's uncomfortable. Okay, what about specific tricky sounds? The podcast mentions focusing on things like TH, R, L.
Oh, yeah, the classic.
And using something called minimal pairs. What are those?
So minimal pairs are just words that sound almost identical, except for one single sound. Think like rice and lice, or three and tree.
Okay.
The value there is isolation. You're focusing just on that one difficult sound. By practicing saying them and hearing the difference, you train your mouth and your ear.
So it's targeted practice for those specific hurdles.
Precisely. Very efficient way to tackle common problems.
Right. Another tool mentioned was using phonetic transcriptions, the IPA. Looks a bit like hieroglyphics at first.
It can seem intimidating, yeah.
Is it really worth learning those symbols?
I'd say definitely. Think about English spelling. It's all over the place, isn't it?
Tell me about it. Cough, though, through.
Exactly. The IPA gives you one unique symbol for every single sound in English. So you look up a word in a good dictionary that uses IPA,
Huh.
and you see exactly how it's pronounced. No guesswork. It takes the ambiguity out.
A universal key, like you said earlier. Okay, now this next one feels almost too simple. Slow down.
It does seem obvious, right? But it's powerful.
Why is slowing down so effective? Most people want to speak faster.
Well, when you deliberately slow down, especially when you're learning or practicing, you give yourself the mental space and physical time to articulate each sound correctly.
Less mumbling, less rushing words together.
Exactly. Clarity improves massively. And don't worry, the speed will come naturally later as you get more comfortable and practiced. But starting slow builds that clear foundation.
Okay, foundation first, speed later. Makes sense. Lastly, they touched on technology. Apps like Elsa Speak, Youglish, even AI tools.
Yeah, the tech options are pretty amazing now.
How did these actually help beyond just being, fancy flashcards?
The big advantage, I think, is the instant feedback. Many apps use speech recognition. They can listen to you, analyze your pronunciation, and often pinpoint exactly where you're going slightly wrong.
So, like a mini pronunciation coach in your pocket.
Kind of, yeah. And Youglish is great because it shows you thousands of real-world video examples of a word being used, so you hear it in context from different speakers.
Different contexts, different accents maybe too.
Right. They just offer really accessible ways to practice and get insights you wouldn't easily get otherwise.
So putting it all together, it sounds like improving pronunciation is really about active listening, like with shadowing. Focused practice, especially on those tricky sounds using minimal pairs or IPA,
Yep.
being brave enough to record yourself, slowing down, and maybe using some helpful tech.
That sums it up pretty well. And the key thing running through the podcast's advice is consistency. It's a process.
Right, not an overnight fix.
Definitely not. But even really short, regular practice makes a difference. We're talking like 5 minutes a day focused on one thing.
Just 5 minutes.
Yeah, pick one tip, shadow one short audio clip, record yourself saying 5 difficult words, look up the IPA for one new word. That consistency adds up fast.
Okay, so for everyone listening, that's the challenge. Maybe pick just one of these ideas we talked about: shadowing, recording, minimal pairs, IPA, slowing down, using an app.
It's just one.
And try it today, just for 5 minutes, because that small action,
Yeah.
done consistently, is really what builds clarity and that confidence we all want when speaking English. Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know that feeling sometimes when learning a language, you just hit a wall and wonder, is this really worth all the effort?
Yeah, it's super common.
So today we're diving into why sticking with English is worth it. We've pulled some great insights from the English Dose podcast,
Right.
our mission. Just a quick, solid look at the big benefits, kind of like a shot of inspiration for you.
And a key point from the source material is just how massive English is globally. We're talking, what, over 1.5 billion speakers?
Wow, yeah, it's a lot.
It really is. And you see it everywhere, don't you? International travel, global business deals, science, definitely the internet.
Totally dominates the internet.
Exactly. So, imagine landing in Tokyo, or maybe you need to present something in Berlin, or just finding your way around Nairobi. English is often that common ground.
It's the bridge, yeah.
Yeah,
Makes connection possible, helps you understand more deeply.
precisely.
And thinking about careers, the English Dose podcast really hammered this home. And it's less of a nice-to-have skill now,
Oh, for sure.
and more like, well, often a requirement, right?
Absolutely. If you're looking at jobs overseas, or even just aiming for a promotion in a company with international ties.
Or starting something online, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. An
Yeah.
online business reaching globally. English skills are pretty much non-negotiable. A real game changer for moving up.
It really shifts things. Okay, so career boost, check.
Well,
What about accessing, well, just information,
yeah.
knowledge?
Huge point. The sources we looked at from English Dose podcast really highlighted this. Think about it. Most of the world's books, research papers, online courses,
They're English.
a vast majority, yeah. So whether you're into like business ideas, tech stuff, psychology, chances are the cutting edge info, or at least a lot of it, is in English first.
That makes sense.
And, it's not just academic stuff. Think about enjoying movies or music or, well,
At least in
podcasts.
the original language. Yeah, it's a different experience.
Totally richer. You get the nuances, the original intent.
Okay, this next one is really interesting. Something the English Dose podcast mentions the brain benefits.
Oh, yeah, the cognitive side. It's fascinating. Learning English isn't just, vocabulary lists.
Right.
The actual process, it strengthens your memory, sharpens how you solve problems, even improves your listening skills.
Like a mental workout.
Exactly. They even talked about this idea of bilingual intelligence, sort of like a mental superpower you develop, especially if it's your second or third language.
Superpower. I like that. So it's personal growth, too, not just practical skills.
Definitely. Which kind of leads nicely into the whole global connection thing.
Ah, right. Making friends.
Yeah, and more. English lets you connect with people across borders, join global communities online or offline.
So when you travel, it's not just asking for directions.
Exactly. You can move beyond feeling like just a tourist. You can have, real conversations, understand local perspectives better. It builds confidence.
A sense of belonging, maybe? Even when you're far from home.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
It just changes how you interact with the world.
Okay, so let's sort of tie this all together. What's the main takeaway for someone listening?
Well, based on what the English Dose podcast was getting at, it boils down to this. Learning English is about much more than grammar rules.
Right. It's about freedom.
Freedom, confidence, yeah, and connection on a massive scale. And it's not about being perfect overnight.
No, definitely not. Consistency is key, right? Keep showing up.
Exactly. Embrace the journey, because every little bit of progress opens up something new.
So, a final thought then, drawing from the source.
Yeah, maybe think of it like this. Learning English isn't just picking up a skill. You're actually actively building a bigger future for yourself.
Building a future.
Yeah, more opportunities, wider connections, maybe seeing the world in a richer way. So the question really is, what new door is English going to open for you?